Good evening, and thank you for watching. My name is Hank Stevenson. I'm the co-founder of the Arizona Agenda newsletter, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's debate. The Citizens Clean Election Commission is the sponsor of this event. As the state's voter education agency, Clean Elections hosts debates so voters have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions on the issues that matter to them, and vote informed. Tonight's debate will feature candidates for the House and Senate in Legislative District 12, which covers parts of Ahwatukee, Chandler, and Tempe. Voters elect 2 representatives and a single senator from each of Arizona's 30 legislative districts. Please note, candidates from the House and Senate are participating tonight. As a moderator, I will try to ensure that candidates have the opportunity to engage directly with their respective opponents. The questions that I'll ask this evening come directly from voters. Leading up to the debates, Clean Elections conducted outreach to voters across the state asking for questions for the candidates. Additionally, Clean Elections surveyed voters to figure out what issues are important to them. We utilized this survey data along with input from the experienced journalists at the Arizona Agenda, the Arizona Capital Times, and the Green Valley News to guide the discussion so it best serves voters. Of course, we want to hear directly from you, the voter. So if you've got questions that you want to submit, you can do that by emailing them to debates@kc-a.com, or you can text them in to 480-808-1814, or you can even dial them in at 480-937-1253. That number should be appearing at the bottom of your screen once we get going. Please specify if your question is for a specific candidate or all candidates, and we screen questions for clarity to eliminate duplication, speeches, personal attacks on candidates, that kind of thing. This debate is scheduled for about an hour and a half, so we may not get to all audience questions, but we'll do our best. Candidates, you'll have 1 minute for your opening and closing statements and 1 to 2 minutes for your responses to voters' questions. We encourage an open exchange of dialogue between opponents. If you feel the need to respond to another candidate's comments, you may do so. I may limit responses for time management purposes, and we remind the candidates and the audience that this is a respectful, courteous, and professional environment. Our goal tonight is to connect candidates and voters so our electorate may vote informed. All right, let's introduce the candidates. In the state Senate race, elect 1. We've got Democratic Representative Mitzi Epstein, a computer systems analyst and your current state representative. Republican David Richardson, an engineer and life science executive. And in the House race, where voters pick 2 representatives, we've got Democrat Patty Contreras, a retired senior programs director for the city of Phoenix. Republican Jim Chaston, a CPA and business owner. Republican Terry Rowe, a retired Mesa police sergeant, and Democrat Stacey Travers, a geophysicist and U.S. Army veteran. That's enough from me. Let's go to opening statements from the candidates, starting with the Senate candidates and Representative Epstein. Please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Hank, and thank you to everybody at Citizens Clean Elections. These debates are so important year after year. They bring us together more than anything else. I think it's terrific, and I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody else who's watching tonight too. Thank you, and those who will watch it later on. This is a great format, and I value and I want to thank you all for sending in questions. Your questions matter a lot to me. I have been volunteering in our community for over 25 years. I've been a volunteer. I was on the Kyrene School Board. I have served with the AYSO Youth Soccer Program. I started out as a coach, loved that so much. I went on to get my National D license so I could coach up to 19-year-olds, because when I jump in to help the community, I want to jump in with everything I've got. And so I was, of course, on the local PTO and PTA. Then I helped the statewide PTO and became the vice president of the statewide PTA as well. I'm a coalition builder, so I've developed and founded local and statewide coalitions of parents, teachers, retirees, local business owners to help our kids, to support high quality public education, because it's fundamental for everything we do in America and for our local economy as well. I'm a computer systems analyst. I've worked for manufacturing corporations and Citicorp in their treasury department. I have then opened up my own small business called Custom Language Training. So I went from software languages, computer languages, to spoken languages because communicating gets things done. Getting things done in the legislature, I have always done by including everybody. So people have come to me with problems they wanted solved, and we solved them together by forming a large coalition. For instance, we did the enormous lift of unemployment insurance reform in 2021. I reached across the aisle to my colleague, David Cook, who's a Republican. I'm a Democrat. We led a very large coalition of people to find a way to help our unemployment insurance work better. Because, you know, unemployment insurance is not just a bridge to the next job for the worker, it's a stabilizer for the entire economy. We wanted to make sure it worked well for our economy. So we improved the benefits for the workers, and we also managed to make the tax rates that employers pay to bring those down. So that's the kind of approach I like to take, a comprehensive approach, bring in everybody, find that balance of what's the right thing to do for our economy and for people's individual lives with their families. I do all this by reaching out constantly. I have a lot of open forums. You'll see me in the park having a forum, online like this, Facebook, Twitter, email. Call my office anytime and set up an appointment. My door is literally always open to my office at the House of Representatives, and I will take all this energy for caring about you and problem solving to the state Senate. I am asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Mr. Richardson, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you organizing and everybody's time. And I think the most fun part for me tonight is seeing the faces of everyone's signs that I've been seeing on the road for so long. So I'm an engineer, scientist, business owner in the life science field, and I'm also a new dad. I have a 6-month-old. I inherited a fantastic Arizona. So my grandfather, my dad, me, all born in Phoenix. My son has now been born in Phoenix. And I inherited in Arizona to help me move from a position of poverty to a position as a first-generation college grad. I have worked in government security, medical devices, making knee, hip, spine implants, moved into cancer research before starting my own company and being a part of helping develop personalized treatments for cancer patients. And I want to be a part of leaving a better Arizona to my son. For me, my top goals are providing quality education, and secondly, make sure we have a secure water supply. I want to know that my son can have a family here and that they'll have sustainable, secure water supply. And I have tremendous respect for anyone who serves in office who runs. It's a sacrifice. And so everyone on the call, you know, I respect you and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Just factually, one of the reasons I am running is because my opponent, her track record has been opposed to the things that I value, education and water. Voted no on almost every budget increase for education, and voted no on the historic water infrastructure bill. And in the last 6 years of her term, she's not passed a single bill. And so I'm running to represent our district the way it deserves to be represented.
May I jump in since he called me out specifically? You're on mute.
That's why the moderator should never mute himself. No, let's keep moving. You can respond in the next thing. I just don't want to get into a back and forth and introductory statements. House candidates, Mr. Chaston, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Hank. And thank you, Clean Elections, and everybody that's watching here and at a later time. Yeah, my name's Jim Chaston. I am running for LD12 State House. I am a CPA. I grew up in the Western United States. I was actually born in Utah. I lived in California, Colorado, Arizona. And I originally moved here when I was 4. We lived here from 4 to 7, moved back at 13. And then when I was able to actually choose on my own, I moved to Arizona. I've got an accounting degree from Arizona State, a master's of taxation from Arizona State, and I got married, and I've had my family here in Arizona. 3 children, 2 daughters and a son, all in their 20s now. Very proud of them as successful adults at this point in time. As a CPA, I've just finished finishing my 32nd tax season. In addition to that, I've was the City of Maricopa Finance Director. I've worked with county special taxing districts. I've served on the school board as a member and as president of school board, dealing with those issues. I've also worked with Native American tribes, dealing with some of their budget issues. So from a government budget perspective, and then also as with my CPA practice, I've worked with thousands of small business owners, community business owners, and individuals to help them have better lives. Early on, I learned that's what my life purpose is to help people have better lives. I've done that through my CPA practice, my accounting degree, serving on school board, and that's what I want to take to the state legislature, is be part of those decisions and those policies that make Arizonans' lives better. And that's why I'm running, and that's why I want your vote. Thank you very much.
Great. Ms. Contreras, you're up.
Thank you, Hank. There we go. Good evening, and thank you to the Clean Elections Commission for this opportunity to speak to voters, and thank you all for tuning in. My name is Patty Contreras. I am one of your Democratic candidates for the Arizona House in LD12. I'm running because I love this state. My family has been in Arizona for over 110 years. I'm originally from the Yuma Valley. I'm the second oldest of 8 children in my family, and I was the first of 6 of us to graduate from college. In addition, I and 2 of my sisters have master's degrees. These 2 sisters are grade school teachers. Supporting public education will be one of my biggest priorities when I get to the legislature. I want to ensure teachers get the pay and the respect that they deserve. I will advocate for funding for more teachers so we can reduce class size. We need more counselors and staff to help classroom teachers, and we need to improve our school infrastructure. I retired from the City of Phoenix last October after 31 years of public service. I worked in the Parks and Recreation Department and the Human Services Departments, providing programs, activities, and resources for youth, teens, adults, and seniors. The last part of my career was working in the Human Services Department and managing our senior centers. I've drafted and implemented policies, collaborated with many stakeholders, and have experience drafting and managing multi-million-dollar budgets. I'm running for this elected office to continue my public service as a representative of this district. Now that I have the time, I want to continue to serve the public and make policy that will benefit our constituents and all Arizonans. I am Patty Contreras, and I'm running to be your state representative in LD12.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Rowe, if you'd introduce yourself.
Thank you, Hank. My name is Terry Rowe. I'm the Vice Mayor of Chandler, and I've been on the Chandler City Council for 8 years. This is my 8th year, ending my 2nd term. I'm a retired Mesa Police Sergeant, and I've lived in Arizona most of my life. And Cheryl and I have been together approximately about 43 years, and we've raised our 2 children. Now they have 2 wonderful families of their own, which we get to enjoy, grandchildren. I feel that my time on the council is working in a nonpartisan way, working with people with different ideas on what is right for Chandler is going to work well for me if I go to the state legislature. And I think we just have an opportunity to do better together. And so when Mitzi talks about getting people together and working together, I think we do have a chance to work and accomplish things if we work together. And so public safety is certainly one of the things that's important to me. I like some of the nuts and bolts stuff, and whether that's transportation or elections and the judicial, those are the things that might not be that fancy for people, but I think the foundation of a great state is making sure that people are safe, and I have good knowledge in that. I understand ARS codes and legal discussion like that. And so my name is Terry Rowe. I'm running for the State House in LD12. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Ms. Travers, you're up next. I'm sorry, muted.
Rookie mistake number 1 of the debate.
We've all done it.
Yikes. So thank you again, Hank, for the opportunity. Hi, everyone, and thank you to the Clean Elections Commission for the opportunity for the debate. My name is, my name is Stacey Travers, in case you didn't know. And I'm running to be your next state representative. I am a scientist, a veteran, and a mom. And I look forward to bringing a fact-based perspective and hands-on lived experience to the State House to fight for the issues that are important to all hardworking Arizonans. As a scientist, I got a degree in geosciences from UNA, and I have the experience on working on water and climate change issues that we need in the legislature to help find sustainable answers to Arizona's future. As a United States Army veteran, I fought corruption and fraud at the VA as an advocate for homeless and disabled veterans. And as your next state representative, I will represent the will of our community with trust, honesty, integrity, and transparency. Government needs to work for us again, and our state budget has to reflect our collective values. I'm focused on a common sense approach to focus more on issues that bring us together, less on what divides us, and to meet the needs of all Arizonans by coming together. Like Mr. Richardson, I'm a mom to 2 young girls. Mine are 4 and 8, and congratulations on your baby. And I too think a lot about the legacy that we're leaving our kids. I see my children's world of opportunity getting smaller. Their access to quality education, their safety at school, as girls being able to make their own family planning and healthcare decisions, the kind of environment that they will inherit, and whether they will have a voice in their democracy. So I'm in it for the fight for their future, and I'm in it for yours too. Thank you.
Thank you. And Representative Epstein, if you'd like to jump in and quickly respond to Mr. Richardson's comment about your budget votes. I just
Thank
didn't
you.
want to stop the show right as we got started there.
I appreciate that. That's a great thing to have a good moderator. And I appreciate, Mr. Richardson, you've got a new baby at home. Surely you are thinking about your baby's future, your baby's education. And I am always focused on that, how our children's future is going to be. And that's why when I voted no on the water bill, I was one of actually several. It's just that it was past midnight. It was the last bill. Several who were going to vote no had left. And so their not voting was their no vote. But the reason I voted no on that water infrastructure bill was not because it was a bad bill, but because it didn't deserve unanimous yes votes. I am very concerned about our water rates and the taxes we are paying, the money from our tax dollars that is going to water. And I want to make sure that as we go forward, we are doing that in a very sensible and transparent way. I still have concerns about WIFA, the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority, and its transparency. So I am a hawk on accountability. I want to make sure I'm always looking out for taxpayers and making sure that we know how our tax dollars are being spent. I wasn't quite satisfied with that WIFA bill and how it worked out, so I voted no, not to stop it, but to make sure people know there's still work to be done there. So the water bill, I'm glad you brought it up because water is serious. Education, I just want to point out
Quickly.
in many years, I voted no on education funding bills because they were not enough funding. This year, there was marginally adequate enough funding in the budget bill that we passed. I'm still worried about the cost of inflation. I know that our teachers pay is still not going to keep up with inflation.
Okay.
But I voted yes on it. So education funding and being there for children is where I have always been.
We're
So
moving
I
on.
want to make sure I'm not
Thank you.
mischaracterized.
All right, we've got a lot of ground to cover, you guys. We'll get to water, we'll get to education. Let's start off at the top here. We've got a lot of questions from the audience about Airbnbs and short-term rentals. This is the most frequent question that voters want to hear from you all about. There's a lot of different ways to phrase this, but let's keep it simple. Do we need to roll back the restrictions we've put on cities' ability to restrict short-term rentals? Should cities have more leeway in restricting short-term rentals? And I'd like to start with the House candidates. Let's start at the bottom. Travers, please.
I personally do think that we should regulate short-term rentals. We have we have a housing crisis here that's happening in Arizona at the moment. Property prices have increased. You've got what I feel is predatory wholesale buying. People are, buying houses and raising and increasing the cost of purchasing a house. Sometimes they're not doing it as a single family residence. Obviously, they're doing it so that they can make some money with short-term rentals. We have, a housing crisis with, rents. People can't afford their rents. So, we need to work with city councils together so that we can try to start mitigating the problem that we're having. We're the, fifth largest growing city in America. And, how do we sustain our housing unless we, start trying to find these, guardrails and guidelines in place that will allow, the residents who are here already to be able to live sustainably in housing, and then also to be able to accommodate the people that do want to live here and don't just want to, make a quick buck.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rowe, what are your thoughts? Do we have a short-term rental problem? And if so, what do we do?
Well, we certainly have issues where people are using residential homes in a commercial way. And that is the American way, let's say that. People are enterprising. But on the other hand, I think that we need to work with the League of Cities and Towns and have a long discussion about this. And I'm not, whatever those regulations might be, those should be well thought out. We shouldn't be changing regulations, from this year to that year and back and forth. I think that I think we should have some predictability in this sort of a thing. And then, and I would say maybe there's a discussion on if someone has a single home and they have one of these properties, that doesn't sound that remarkable to me. If someone has their own home and they have 10 or 12 or 15, then maybe that's, a more serious discussion. So love to talk about it. I think it is an important issue, and I'm glad you asked the question. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Contreras, what's your take?
I definitely think that the power to regulate this should go back to the cities. Some smaller towns, especially Sedona, is a city that's really being affected right now, where the people who work in the city can't even afford a home in that city. There's also there's no students, because so much of the homes in Sedona are going towards people who for short-term rentals and all. So there's no students in the city. So we're losing that opportunity for public education in Sedona. Some of our smaller communities, will have that effect on that. And taxes too is going to be impacted, which of course I'm sure they tax the B&Bs, but sometimes maybe it's a little bit different than having a homeowner tax. And then a lot of issues around these short-term rentals. The police are being called out for nuisance calls, for people being rowdy, for trash, for being disruptive in the neighborhood. So I definitely think this is something that we need to take a look at again, and maybe give it back to the city so that they can see what's needed in their city and work on it for their city.
Okay. Mr. Chasen?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the question. Yeah, so it should, I believe it's definitely a city issue. Every city has different issues, and in some cities, it may not, the Airbnbs, short-term rentals, may not be an issue, and in other cities they are. And so for the state to set a statewide limitation on that, I just can't support. It's a city issue, and the community members in each of those cities and the city council should be setting that at that level. And yet at the same time, it's a free market. It's, the American way, the enterprising of that, like Mr. Rowe said. I don't want government to get involved and mess up the free market, because that's when we start causing issues in our economy, is when the government gets involved in the free market, which it does all the time. And so we need to be careful about how much government gets involved in regulations and regulating different industries and causing problems with the free market. And yet there are issues related to short-term rentals, as have been brought up, police issues, other issues, that those, I consider them business owners as a CPA. If you've got an Airbnb, you're a business owner, and you need to adhere to those business regulations in the city and the state, including the noise ordinances and all of those things. And it is your responsibility to take care of those as a business owner of that Airbnb. And so they need to be held accountable for those items also. Thank you.
Okay. And to the Senate candidates, Mr. Richardson,
Yeah,
any problem?
can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so to me, this really depends on what the actual problem is. So is the problem people are asking about whether these properties are producing a nuisance, or is the problem about housing affordability? And I think the answer to that really would affect what I talk about.
We've got the gauntlet. We've got questions about affordability. We've got question about ethics. We've got it all. Take your pick.
So I think there should be accountability. I think, as a free market conservative, I think that there should be accountability, but also in terms of affordability, there's other factors just besides saying that people can't buy investment properties. There's kind of we are behind in development of housing, and there are several reasons for that. It can do with inefficient permitting processes at the cities. It can do with different zoning and permitting processes for high density housing. And I think part of the affordability problem that's happening is because Arizona is such a great place to live. And so supply and demand, we have very high demand for housing because Arizona is great, and development will have to catch up. Whether we punish people for making investments, majority of people's retirements, working class people, their retirements and their investments are in real estate. And so taking that away from people, I think, is something that should be considered extremely carefully before we just jump in to put a Band-Aid on a problem.
Okay.
I'd like to push back on something, and I feel that
Right in.
Dave is slightly mischaracterizing my statement. I wasn't saying that people can't have investment properties. So if your grandma or grandpa have worked hard all their lives and want to buy another house somewhere in Phoenix and rent it out, that's one thing. I'm talking about corporations who are buying property en masse and causing this huge sort of rate increase.
And I wasn't trying to target you, Stacy. So.
No, I didn't think you were, but I just, I understand to your point, but that to speak to what I was saying, that wasn't what I was saying.
Okay.
Thanks.
Representative Epstein, what are you saying?
This has been a great discussion of the issue, and it runs the gamut. We had a bill this year that finally did get passed, and it would allow Sedona to put some caps on where short-term rentals are allowed, because Sedona, as Patty Contreras mentioned, is facing the problem of people who work there can't even afford to live there. So that's a situation of, we looked at a specific problem, came up with a specific solution for that city. Meanwhile, it gave a little more leeway to our cities to do some regulation, because all of these solutions really come down to enforcement, and the cities are where it would be enforced. So if it's a party house that's too noisy, the city needs to be able to follow ordinances or state laws that they can enforce. And so the best way to do it is not for the state to do overreach and say everybody the same way. The way to do it is to lift the barriers to cities and allow each city to come up with a solution that's right for themselves. Let them pass ordinances and regulations that will help each city, each neighborhood be the way that the people in that area want it to be, instead of having the state say Wild West, because that's what happened in 2016. The governor said, let's just let it be the Wild West, and it didn't work out so well. So now we're modifying. That's how laws go. And but I certainly am not a fan of state overreach. I believe in local control, and I would like to see our cities have more local control to find the right solution for each city.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mark? Mark? This is Terry Rowe. Are you there?
Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Rowe,
can I just interject very quickly?
sure, hop in.
Yeah, this is one of those things that's happening around, at least in this country and somewhat around the world. People are reinventing things. They're coming up with new processes and new ideas, and that is exciting. And I will tell you, as new as this industry is, and they are doing a lot of reforms on their own. They are making choices that no party type of things. So I wouldn't be too hard on the industry. And we're going to have the gamut with the cities and the towns. They're going to want to go from one extreme to the other. So hopefully we can get some guidance, work out some of that stuff with the state, League of Cities and Towns, and just try and provide some good guidance and stuff that is reasonable. And so that's my comment. Thank you.
All right, let's talk a little bit about water. This is probably the second most frequent question that voters have. And essentially they want to know, what is your plan to address our water crisis? Knowing there's no silver bullet to solving this, I'd like to give you all a chance to explain what you bring to the table. What is your approach? What is your thinking? What are a couple of proposals that will help us solve this problem? And let's stick with the House candidates first with Mr. Chason.
Great, thank you, Hank. Yeah, water, it's what I hear about every single day as I'm talking to people in the district. And we really can't take anything off the table at this point, whether it's desalination plants, whether it's piping water in, certainly conservation efforts from all different aspects, from agriculture, commercial, residential. We can't necessarily pick one of those out. It needs to be across the board and equally distributed across the board. We all need to take responsibility in our water's future here in Arizona, because it's so important, especially as we continue to grow. And then from a national level, we've got to build coalitions, and I know there are coalitions in dealing with the Colorado water and the cutbacks and so forth, and those need to be done a little more fairly. Hopefully we can work with some of our U.S. congressmen to address some of those issues in a more fair way. Arizona has taken the brunt of those cuts from the Colorado River, and that needs to be done in a more fair way. And then we're going to work with the experts in developing additional technologies. I'm really in favor of using technology, especially in agriculture, and being able to use the water in a better way to be able to produce the same amount of agriculture in our state. Using technology as we move forward is very important. And that's what I'm going to be working on along with the experts in this area to ensure that we've got a bright future in Arizona for water and energy. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Contreras, how do we solve this?
It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of cooperation, that's for sure.
Probably a lot of money, huh?
Pardon me?
Probably a lot of money too.
A lot of money. But speaking of money, when we start looking at the money, we need to make sure that we're not outpricing our water for all of our vulnerable adults or people, anybody. We can build a desalination plant in the Sea of Cortez, but how much is that going to take to bring the water up here to the Phoenix area? And how much will that cost the consumer to have that water? We don't want to make water so expensive that it's just unreasonable. I would like to see a lot more encouragement of conservation. Let's educate everybody on how to conserve the water. Let's turn the water off, spigot off when you're brushing your teeth, basic things. I don't know if parents are teaching their kids that. We need to maybe have some stipends or help for low water use appliances, low water use spigots, those types of things. And then reduce our lawns and reduce our thirsty trees. So there's some trees out there were brought from other places, and they suck up a lot of the water instead of having water. You know, our desert hardy trees, our palo verdes, our mesquites, things along those lines that don't use as much water. So we need to encourage reuse of the water as much as possible. And I was talking to a water manager in Gilbert, actually, not too long ago, and they were telling me that they reuse and recycle and reuse and recycle that water. I think she said 17 times, which is amazing, you know, but that's great. That's what we need to do. And we need to encourage industry to do that too. Any industry that's coming into our state, we need to make sure that they're using water in a reusable fashion. We need to reimagine farming. I grew up in a farming community, and back then flood irrigation was the way to do farming. That's something that's not going to be able to work anymore. It just takes up too much water, you know, so we need low water use and high yield crops. The other day, Stephanie Stahl Hamilton mentioned agrovoltaics, which is something that U of A is looking at. And they're doing it in Colorado, which is a way to put solar panels over farming areas to, you know, kind of everything works together that way, which is great. So low water use, we get solar energy, you know, that's the type of stuff and technology we really need to work towards. And then we need to account for all of the water that we do have. We need to make sure that we can take a look at our rural areas and see how much water is being used, how much, you know, where the pumps are, the major pumps, not, you know, the neighbor's pump and, you know, not residential necessarily, but the bigger pumps, and see how much water is coming out of that and what they're using it for. You've all heard about the Saudi Arabian problem in the valley down here, where, you know, they're pumping a lot of water, they're not paying us, and we're losing money for our schools. And, you know, those are the types of things we need to look at. There's, I was down in Bisbee area, Benson area, a few years ago, and the water tables have dropped there, and the ground has dropped. We have a lot of sunken areas because they're doing pecans. Pecans take a lot of water. So those are the types of companies that we need to take a look at and see, does it make sense for them to be here and taking all of our water when we really, really need water to sustain ourselves? Like I said, I'm a third generation Arizonan, and I sure want to ensure when I get to the state legislature that we have water for future generations.
Okay. Mr. Rowe, your thoughts?
Yeah, an awful lot of good points have been made here. And I think the first one is it's a desert, folks. And I think we all realize that. But a lot of what could have been done was a lot of planning. And so when I was first on the city council 6 years ago, the city of Chandler spent $40 million to try and assure a 100-year supply of water. And so we also have good water contracts with Intel, and we've signed some new contracts with water. And this is what every community should be doing. And Patty is right. When we talk about some of the water companies in rural Arizona, I don't know that we need to get after them or that sort of thing, but they probably could use some help and guidance and support. It can be daunting when you've got an old system that's many years old, and it's leaking and you're losing water. So that's important. But I will say we need to take care of our agriculture, our ranchers, our cattlemen, our farmers. It doesn't get into the grocery store by accident. It happens in a planned way. And then the other thing is that on the desal plants, if Arizona and other states ever invested in a desal plant, it would be to build something in California or the Sea of Cortez, and then let them keep the water, and let these states or Mexico give up some of the water that they would be allotted. So we wouldn't have to move it up here. We would just be able to use it because maybe California would take less water. And that's part of what agreements are made, and that's the AMWA, Arizona Municipal Water folks. And so we've got smart people working on it, and we need to keep our ear open and pay attention and see what comes next. Good planning.
A lot of good answers here. Let's go to the geologist. Ms. Travers?
Well, what can I say that hasn't already been said? And not knowing that we only have an hour and a half, I will keep it brief. Just to know that, as Terry said, it's planning, and we all need to come together to understand, what kind of problems we have. We've gone slightly forward with this most recent budget and the funding that's been allocated to, addressing this crisis. And we need to look at things in sort of two phases. There's short-term solutions like conservation, then there's long-term solutions like, creating infrastructure. And it's not an easy question to answer. I'm not so sure about desalination. I'm not so sure about piping water. It depends on where we pipe it from, because we're talking about an imbalance in the ecosystem. If we bring it in from Mississippi, what is their water like, and what implications is there going to have for Arizona? But we need to start addressing things like being able to regulate how much water gets pumped, and how we define surface water and groundwater, and looking at bringing business together along with agriculture. Is there a way, Patty mentioned alfalfa and flood irrigation. I know of an example where local agriculture and businesses got together. They were breweries. What do you need as a brewery? We need barley. Okay, barley is a medium, drought yield crop. So do we switch to barley and then supply our local businesses? And, how do we keep our water in Arizona so that we can allow our agriculture industry to thrive, while also, supporting, an economic infrastructure that we also need. As Patty mentioned, there are solar powered hydro panels. How do we, invest in, in entrepreneurial? Dave is an entrepreneur. How do we, find these opportunities and create these opportunities so that, we can advance Arizona, into the future? And we also need to look at geopolitical. How do the relationship with other states work, and how do we, start to have those discussions about the water issues that we have that we're all sharing. So I will leave it at that relatively short answer.
Not bad, not bad. And Senate candidates, I think we did Mr. Richardson first last time. So Representative Epstein, why don't you start us off?
Sure. Well, let me start by jumping off from where Stacey Travers ended, which was the geopolitical, if you will. So one of the solutions people have thought of is a desal, which would take water from the ocean, filter it. Now we could drink it. And the general intention has been to let Mexico or California keep that water, and we'll take their water rights. Mexico, Sea of Cortez is the most likely place for that to happen. There's a couple massive problems with that. There's several. Number one, it's over $1 billion to build it. Number two, it's not really very much. In the big scheme of things, it's a drop in the bucket, if you will. It's not really enough to be a big solution. And number three, the water isn't there. So we could say, hey, Mexico, let us have your Colorado water rights from the north end of the state, and we'll help build to make more water for you down from the Sea of Cortez. The trouble is that water up in the northern part of the state, it's not there. So then we're faced with, okay, do we desal and pipe it? Well, that would be a pipeline running uphill, which would take an awful lot of electrical power. And, we think about oil pipelines and so on. Moving water is a wholly different situation from moving oil. And finally, we have so many things go on that are problematic for pipelines. They need lots of security. and they're just highly expensive. So piping water from the Midwest, from an ocean, is highly problematic. So we need to be very serious and we need to both be very innovative and think, what if we could do this? But we also need to look at the practicalities and what would this really cost? Because the bottom line is that everybody out there who's listening, will have to pay for it with your taxes or with your water rates. So already our tax dollars are paying $500 million to some people who have water rights for them to give up their water rights so the water can flow down to the rest of the state. That's expensive. That's 10,000 teachers or a whole big raise for all of the people who do caregiving in our state. Instead, we're paying for water with our taxes. So it is a big discussion. I have been a member of the Rural Affairs Committee. In that committee, we look at water frequently. I attend at least every other week during the legislative session workshops they call them Water Wise, and we have 1 to 2 hour meetings to learn all of the aspects of water, because there's a lot to learn here. And I'm been really so happy to hear the thoughtfulness from everybody. But there is a lot to learn here, and I'd like to offer my experience to the voters that I've been in this for quite some time. And you have to know the technicalities, the hydrology, the many different players, and the longstanding traditions we have in Arizona, where our landowners would like to have just property rights. Why can't I just have the water beneath my property? And we all know the problem is, if you drill a 200-foot well and your neighbor, who happens to be a Saudi Arabian farmer, drills a 1,000-foot well, they get all the water. And in this case, they're getting it for free. And that is probably a violation of the gift clause. And that's why we need Chris Mays to be elected to state attorney general, so she can stop that and protect our taxpayers. But that's another story. So for right now, I'm just saying, I'm looking at what is it going to cost and what are the long-term ramifications of water. I'm really glad to hear everybody is being so thoughtful about it.
All right. Mr. Richardson?
Yes. Yeah, so thank you. I would just say, really briefly, going last on this, that I disagree with the pessimism about desal. There's actually a lot of water in Arizona, but a lot of it is contaminated, brackish. And so those desal plants don't have to be in Mexico. They can be in Arizona proper, closer to where we're going to use it. But overall, I really want to stress, we are good at innovating. So you look at the cost that it took to sequence the human genome when it first started, it was $1 billion, right? Or about that. And we're at a place today where someone had announced recently this year, they had done $100 human genome sequencing. That is progress in cost. Yes, desal is expensive now. It won't always be. I really like this quote. It says, we're all faced with a series of opportunities brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. I am running because I'm very worried about our water future, but I'm also excited about the innovation that I know will happen because we're good at this. As a state, we use less water now than we did in the 50s. Private enterprise did that, not regulation. Regulation has a place, but the government is not good at innovating. Private industry is. And so you see people like NASA who set up the X Prize, right? Because they wanted designs from private industry for spacecraft. There are lots of ways we can incentivize innovation without over-regulating and killing industries. And I think we have to be really careful to do that. And we can do it. But leadership is, and I've experienced in leadership, both on community levels and in business, leaders take people and they say, we're going over that mountain. You see that mountain? We got to get over it. There's obstacles in the way, but we're going to start. And here's the path. And we take steps. Bold leadership take steps. Water has been a problem in Arizona for decades. We've seen it coming, and only now, I regret that it's taken till now to pass this historic water infrastructure bill and funding. And so when my opponent says that she voted no because it didn't deserve a unanimous yes, I just respectfully don't buy it, because she was in the House for 6 years. I would say respectfully, what have you proposed? What have you proposed? And nothing has been passed in 6 years. I wanted leaders who will be proactive and not reactive, who will take steps towards something instead of just saying that's not good enough. So I am actually very optimistic about our water future. We can innovate our way out of it. We're good at it. We've done it before. And if we had more time, I'd love to dive into the technical details.
So Mr. Richardson asked, what did I propose? A lot. So a lot of what's in that WIFA bill was what I had suggested and what our Democratic caucus had worked very hard on making sure that it was a far more transparent and accountable proposal than what the governor first brought, which is how things should work. Somebody brings a proposal, we do lots of changes. And a lot of the things that Mitzi Epstein, proposed are in that bill. So yes, I have proposed them. But generally, I am like another famous quote, you can get an awful lot done if you don't care about whose name goes on it. And thus, Jake's bill, family caregiver grants, suicide prevention coordinator for the state, on and on and on. These were my proposals. They became bipartisan bills and laws that passed. And they didn't necessarily have my name on them. Some of them do, some don't. But we got the work done, and that's what matters.
But everything that has passed respectfully does not have your name on it. In other Democrat leadership for our district, it does have their name on it. And so all I'm saying is, one of the reasons I'm running is I would like to see real bold leadership for our district, representing it the way it deserves to be represented.
I led for a year, over a year, a large team of experts, medical experts, insurance experts, parents, patients to work on our mental health care insurance reforms that became Jake's Law, a tremendous step forward to make sure that people can access mental health insurance because they've already paid for their insurance. And we wanted to make sure that they could use it and that we could save lives. And I led that. And we met for every other week for well over a year. I led that, I brought it in. We worked with many different people to develop the bill. The bill was a great bill and it passed with bipartisan support. The sponsors were playing a political game whereby they wanted those two sponsors to get, who were Republicans at the time, to get credit for it. They simply didn't want me to get the credit for it, but you ask anybody who worked on it, I led the way, and that's what I'm happy to keep on doing. Because what matters to me is that we help people and that we look at problems, apply a scientific method to determine the best solution, and then implement that solution. And that's what I'm going to keep on doing.
Okay. All right. We've got a lot of ground to cover here. I've got a couple of questions on education, but I think the one that most frequently has come up from the audience here is something about the school aggregate spending limits. Let's start with the House candidates and Ms. Travers. But the question is, essentially, Arizona has a constitutional cap on how much money schools can spend called the aggregate expenditure limit. The last couple of years, lawmakers have had to go in there and lift that limit on a temporary basis because we're putting more money into education. The questions I have here from voters are you willing to lift it again next year, as will probably be necessary? And more broadly, should we just send this back to the voters and ask them to simply repeal it?
Thank you for the question. I do feel that we need to create a new formula for how we spend our educational dollars. So I guess you said in the beginning of the debate, just answer the question simply. So would I raise the cap? Yes, I would. Would I take it back to the voters? Yes, I would. Because at the end of the day, the Arizona Constitution created an opportunity for the people and the community to have their voice. And it feels a little like every time they exercise their voice and their will, somebody in the state legislature finds a way to shoot it down. And that's not really what democracy is about. And, we are here to represent the people. And if the people, go through the process as dictated in the Arizona State Constitution, then we need to allow it to get on the ballot for the people to vote on it. and have the people have their voices heard and have their will reflected in how we run our state government.
Okay. Mr. Rowe, what are your thoughts?
Well, it certainly does look like maybe the formula should maybe be revised. Clearly, it got through into this year's budget, this coming year's budget, and I'm quite sure it would again. But we do have inflation, and so and inflation is doing serious damage to our economy. And I would say maybe this is something that the state can either change the formula on or amend it, or if you want the voters to vote, if that's important, then we could let that happen.
Okay. Ms. Contreras?
Thank you. Yes. So we need our legislatures, our Democratic state legislatures have asked the governor, the current governor, to have a special session to override this limit for this year, actually this year that we're already in, the school year that we're already in. And he has not said anything about having a special session and all. So that means it's going to come back to the new legislatures coming in January. Last year, I was down, or it was this last school season, I was down at the state legislature advocating for passage of that law, of the bill, or to override of the AEL with my educator friends, retired educators, other advocates and all. I was down there trying to get the legislature, the Republican legislature, to pass that bill so that the schools didn't have to worry about if they were going to be able to pay their teachers at the end of March. So the Republicans held it over as a bargaining chip. They did not put it forward. They did not put it forward. They did not put it forward. It came up right at the beginning of the session, and they waited till practically the last second where teachers, parents, administrators were all worrying if they were going to have money come April. And, it didn't have to be that way. It did not have to be that way. I would advocate, obviously, for passing that override right away, right as soon as we get into session, so that our teachers, our administrators, our students, our parents know that they're going to have money for the rest of the school year. It put a hold on it. It was going to put a hold on the school year, and they were going to have to close schools in April. I don't know about you, but if you have kids in schools, you're not going to be able to find, what you're going to be able to do with these kids if the schools close in April. And it was just a bargaining chip. That's all it was. And so we need to override it right away and then refer it back to the voters. We can pass a bill, we can take a look at what it needs to do, but put it over to the voters to see if they want to repeal it, maybe change it, give them some options, get some people together and find out what our best option is for that. Things have changed since that bill came about in 1980, I believe it was. Technology has changed. That's the biggest thing. Security needs have changed. We didn't have mass shootings back in 1980. So the schools are having to be built differently. We're having to put security cameras in. There's all sorts of different things that we need to take a look at. So yes, I would definitely lift that override or pass that override right away, and then again, refer it back to the voters.
Okay. Mr. Chaston?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I love this question. And I would definitely override the AEL this coming year. And in addition to that being in the Constitution, the legislature also has the responsibility of the budget in the Constitution. And so I would send AEL back to the voters to repeal that and put the power of the Constitution back to the legislature, so that when they appropriate the funds for education, that we don't have to do this every year, and they can actually get the dollars that the legislature appropriated. Last year was 1.2 billion. We'll see what it ends up being this coming year. That law went into effect in 1980, last amended in 1986. And the entire school funding system is almost 50 years old. With technology, with things that we've learned, the education systems, we need to revamp the way that our education funding is created. And that's one of the things that I want to do, over the next 2, 4, 6 years is in education. Let's get a new system in place for funding so that our teachers are being paid well enough, our administrators have it, our students have the resources that they need, both technology in building and infrastructure, so that we can provide the education that our children deserve, as that's our future. That's the future of our communities, of our state, and of our nation. And we need to invest in that, in them, so that we have the future that we want, the innovation and all of those things that we want our children to have. So thank you very much for that question. And I'll keep going, but we'll cut it off there.
Bipartisan agreement in the House. Senate candidates, Mr. Richardson, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think.
And repeal it, or ask the voters to repeal it, I guess are the two questions.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you can, we will continue the streak of bipartisanship. So yes, I agree with essentially all that Mr. Chasten has just shared. I would vote. In my opinion, the will of the people was expressed when the legislature passed additional funding for education. And so that money should make it to the schools to be used. I would just add that, I'm part of a group of incoming potential lawmakers who are already ready to take essentially, meaningful steps towards improving our education system. And so there is the Pay Teachers First plan that Matt Gress proposed, and I do anticipate supporting that plan and providing essentially a $10,000 pay raise to teachers across the state, of course tied to other, requiring financial transparency and some other things. But teachers do need a pay raise, and it has been the will of the people to give them raises. I was door knocking because I'm out quite often, and I met a teacher who was sharing with me. She said, "Why does the legislature keep, allocating money for us for pay raises, and it never makes it to us?" And honestly, I told her, I don't know. I'll look into it. And I had no idea that the districts are the ones deciding what to do with that money. The districts were the ones, not the legislature, who was allocating that money elsewhere besides the teachers. And so I absolutely support legislation that says we're going to give teachers a $10,000 pay raise. It must be allocated to them. It cannot be diverted. And frankly, just going back, to this kind of ongoing discussion my opponent and I have been having, she has voted no on nearly every education budget increase in her time in office. And our teachers, our education system deserves better than that.
And Ms. Epstein, you're up.
Thank you. It's a great question. Education funding is my bailiwick. I have been working on it for years, decades at this point. I have the endorsement of the teachers, school board members, school administrators, Stand for Children, many, many other groups, SOS, education, and education funding in particular. When I first was on the Kyrene School Board, I took the time to back engineer the Arizona education funding system and learned it, and then began to teach it to other parents and education advocates, how it works, how we could improve it, how it's fair, how it's not fair, and so on. And I've taken that knowledge forward into the legislature to fight for our children. And so, I had to smile when I heard about the Matt Gress proposal that my opponent mentioned. We all want teachers to have better pay, but I've listened to Republicans like Matt Gress, who are all talk and no walk, and I want to call him out in particular because he had the ear of the governor on the budget, and yet there was no signing on to the educators' budget. If he really cared about educators, he might have signed on to the educators' budget through the governor's office, but there was none of that. So why does the money not get down to teachers? We keep asking that. Well, I'll tell you why. Because year after year, my Republican colleagues have given dollars to K-12 with one hand and taken it away with two other hands. And this happens time after time. So for instance, even this last session, they gave money to K-12 that is almost up enough to keep up with Arizona's inflation, which is higher than the rest of the country. But then they took it away with the AEL. They're going to cap it with the AEL. They took it away with vouchers that are going to drain money away from our classrooms. And they took it away by removing the equalization source of revenue for K-12 education, putting us in a world of hurt if we have any kind of an economic downturn coming up. So adding money for teachers is terrific, but that's nowhere near enough because our HVAC systems need repair. Our buildings need structural repairs, learning materials, books and buses. All of these things cost money. And when you put out a big marketing plan that says money for teachers, what about everything else? Well, everything else costs money. And what we need is to fully fund our schools. That's why the education legislators and I have put together an op-ed that should be coming out shortly with a call to action for all of the candidates. And many of you will probably agree with our call to action. It sounds like that we need to call the governor to call us into special session this year. Because as Patty Contreras mentioned, our schools really need to know, they need the stability of to know, are we going to be funded all the way through the school year or only 2/3? Because that cap would be stop everything at 2/3. And our teachers, our students, our children, our families need this stability. And that's why I'm working with the other cadre of legislators to call all of the candidates to action, to ask the governor to call us in a special session. And we have an op-ed that describes how we would comprehensively, fully fund our children's education to make sure we educate the whole child.
And I must jump in, Hank, quickly. I really hope the viewers watching tonight that the irony is not lost on you. That my opponent has said that she believes that Mr. Gress and people like myself will simply say and do nothing, when her legacy has been to say and do nothing for 6 years regarding education funding. And in this last session, $1 billion, about 960 million or so, is going towards education. That is not going to be completely funneled away. They're not butchering the budgets for schools. That is $1 billion. And so I think it's quite ironic that she would say that.
I have amendments on the record where I offered amendments in the budget to pay our teachers better, and every Republican voted no on it.
Which is why I hope I will earn your vote for everyone watching, as I will vote to increase teachers' pay in the first session.
And how will you do that when the rest of your party is forcing you to say no? Because I'm there and I know the power of the party. So I'm just thrilled to hear that you are going to be the single maverick who would vote differently from the rest of your party, when year after year, the Republican Party, I have offered amendments to pay our teachers better, to do better for class sizes. And either the bills simply do not get a hearing or they're completely voted down by every Republican legislator.
I appreciate that comment. Yeah. So there's actually, it's not just me. I'm not a maverick. There is a coalition of Republicans specifically who want to pass this legislation, who believe that it's important that every child should have a quality and safe education. And so, that said, the fact that you voted no on the 20% by 2020 is a permanent track record that says you do not support education. Leaders take steps to get over the mountain. And all I'm saying respectfully is that our district needs leadership that will take steps in the right direction instead of just saying, I see obstacles.
The math, I have to jump in, the math matters. 20 by 20 happened, and now our teachers are, when we look at inflation, at an 8.5% deficit in the last 10 years. So when we look at, and not even considering this year's inflation, but up until the past year's inflation, our teachers are down 8.5% in their teacher pay over the course of the last 10 years. So every time I voted no on funding education, it was because it was not enough. When we had the money, and all we had to do was have the willpower to care about children.
I think this back and forth has raised a really interesting question because Representative, you have voted no on all these budgets because they're not enough. I've seen it year after year. And Republicans, there are many Republicans who would like to do more at the Capitol as well, but can't get the numbers and aren't willing to work with a majority of Democrats, which is what it's going to take. Even if there's a coalition of Republicans who want to put significantly more resources into education, they're going to be the minority teaming up with a majority of Democrats. Are you comfortable in that position, Mr. Richardson, especially considering that may mean rolling your own leadership? Those bills don't get to the floor because Republican leadership won't let them get to the floor. Are you willing to team up with some Republicans and all the Democrats to overpower the will of some Republicans?
So I am willing to vote for what is best for Arizona, regardless of who proposes it. If it's good for Arizona, I'm for it. And I'll clarify even more, I'm pro-kids. There's a bill that is pro-kids, I'm for it.
And it doesn't matter what the party line votes or the party bosses are going to tell you.
I'm a Republican, not because I'm part of some, like it's some club or like I took some sort of oath. I'm a Republican because my values align with the platform of the Republican Party. And I doubt this will ever happen, but I'm my own person. If my values and the platform were to diverge, I still have the values that I'm telling the community right now that I'm running on, which is I care about education. I really care about a future with secure water supply. I don't anticipate the Republican Party changing, but I'm just trying to highlight to you that I am a Republican because my values align with it. But I am an Arizonan, and all the people in our district, which is a very purple district, we actually have a majority independents here, but it's almost like an equally thirds pie. We're neighbors. A lot of our kids are going to go to the same schools. So we are on the same side, and I'm endeavoring to represent our district well.
Okay. We've
Can
got verification stuff to talk about. Is it?
Hank, just very quickly,
Yes,
you know,
okay.
it's something that listening to the exchange back and forth, in a perfect world, we all define education in the same way. And while I respect, Dave's view on, wanting to do what's best for Arizona, I think, in the forum of a debate, you can't really get down into the nuts and bolts of how you define, a good education for your kid. And so I think it's important for the viewers to be able to distinguish, yes, everybody wants to do what's best for their kid. But when you say, I want a great education for my kid, what does that mean? And I'm sure you'll get, at some point to the next question that has to deal with education. And so
Vouchers next.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's very important that, when we're in a debate, we talk in sort of broad generalities. But now, you need to listen to the candidates further past this debate forum and find out how they define good education or what that exactly entails.
Okay. All right. Let's talk
done.
about empowerment scholarships accounts, otherwise known as vouchers. Slight difference, but basically they allow students to use taxpayer money that would have gone ordinarily to a public school to attend a private school instead. Lawmakers have passed legislation this year to open up ESAs to all 1.1 million students in Arizona, and education advocates are attempting to refer that law to the ballot, as they did with a similar law in 2018 that was resoundingly defeated at the ballot. So I have different questions for the Republicans and the Democrats here. For the Republicans, I want to know, do you support the extension of ESAs to all students? And if so, what do you say to the voters who voted that down 4 years ago? And for the Democrats, I have a separate question. It's, do you think ESAs should be expanded in any way? And would you vote to eliminate the ESA program altogether if you could? And let's go back to the House candidates. I feel like it's been a while since I've heard from you guys. I'm sorry. Mr. Chasen, why don't you kick us off here?
Great, thank you. ESA is big issue in this last session, and yes, I definitely support ESAs. I think it's an amazing tool for parents to be able to choose the education for their children that is best for their children. It's different than it has been in the past. ESAs. I believe we should be funding kids, not institutions. And yet it doesn't mean our public education system has to suffer. I grew up in the public education system. I have two sisters that are public teachers. Both of my wife's sisters are teachers. My mother was a teacher. My father was an educator. My grandparents were educators and administrators. My daughter just graduated with a music education degree. Public education is extremely important. I grew up. It is what is going to define the future of our country as people get educated. And it's not a one or the other. We don't have to sacrifice public education for ESAs. There's room for both. But it's very important for parents and having the parental rights and the transparency that they can pick the best education for their child. They know better what is better for their child than the government does. And so ESAs are incredibly important for parents to be able to do that. And healthy competition in a free market system, it breeds innovation. You know, we look at some of the public school systems that have charter schools and the innovation that has been created because of the charter school system. I think ESAs are also going to breed innovation and excellence, and all schools across the board are going to become better because of some of that competition. And I completely disagree that the public school system is going to suffer because of ESAs. The children are going to go to different schools. Those resources aren't going to need to be there. That said, this ESA system, there's additional things that need to be done. We need to deal with some transportation issues related to ESAs so that in more impoverished areas can move and get to other schools. We need to address those things as well. It's not just ESAs, but we need to provide parents, single parents, or parents with low income that don't have the ability to get their child to the school that they want to. We need to address those issues also, so that there's more opportunities about alternatives and opportunities for our children to become successful. That's what we need to focus on, not whether institution is suffering, and because there's opportunities for success and excellence. And I'll leave it
there. Let me follow up there, though. What do you say to the 65% of Arizona voters who expressly said they didn't want the legislature to do this just 4 years ago?
No, I appreciate that. And that's a big issue, because I'm not sure they completely understood the entire issue because of some of the marketing that happened with that initiative. That happens with a lot of the initiatives. The bill says that the title of the bill says one thing, but what's inside of it is completely different, that we see from a lot of the Democratic initiatives that come on the ballot. And then I've talked with a number of parents that they didn't understand what that bill really was. That may not be all of Arizonans, but as I sit here and look at the education, with the importance of education that I've grown up with teachers and administrators, being on school board, public school system, public school district, and seeing that competition, I believe this is the best for our children and for Arizona, for the future of education in Arizona.
Okay. Ms. Contreras, the question for Democrats is essentially, should we expand it at all, or should we would you get rid of this program if you had the opportunity?
Well, I am passing around petitions right now to stop the expansion of the ESAs. So if you voters out there, if you know me and you want to get signatures, give me a jingle. I can get you a petition to sign. So that being said, ESAs have been used for special education students, for foster families, for military families, for students in DRF schools. That's great. Let's keep it that way. There's no need to expand this program at all. What we need to do is fully fund our public education system. When we put the money into these private schools, there's no accountability. I think Representative Epstein can speak to this later, that they tried to put accountability into this bill. They wanted to know where the money was going, how it's being spent, what are the measures being done, how do we know what the student is learning? Are they learning real history or some made up history? So those are the types of things that we really need to address, is like, yes, I would, let's get rid of this expansion, not to get rid of what's already there, you know, but we're looking at a shift of a possible $45 million out of our public school system right now. If you saw the paper, it was yesterday or today, there's 6,500 ESA vouchers that have applications that have already been done. Of those 6,500, 3/4 of them have never even attended public school. So this isn't helping the public school kids. This is helping the private school kids. And, you know, it's just a drain. It's a drain on our public school funds. And again, there's no measures for it as far as, you know, student achievement, you know, what they need to learn. We don't know what the curriculums are. All that stuff is hidden. And we don't even know, you know, who's making the money off of this. So 2-1, we voted for it, 2018 against it. And I believe that our voters knew what they were voting for, and that's why they voted this down so dramatically back in 2018.
Okay. Mr. Rowe, should we expand it? And if so, what do you tell the 2/3 of voters who didn't want to do that?
Well, Hank, Jim Chase and I agree on a lot of things, and I think he just hit the nail on the head. I want our schools to innovate, and they've done a lot of that. That has happened, and it has been happening. But look at all the school districts that we have. We need to incentivize the school districts to have more schools within a district. There is a great deal of finance that is lost through all that administration. And so for me, innovation and competition is really going to give our kids the best chance for education. And so that's what I say. I didn't get to vote for this, but I would vote for it. It is for our kids, K-12, and I'm all for it.
And the people who voted against it just 4 years ago, what do you tell them, or how do you explain that?
What I can tell you is this, is that people that run around, and I do not like voter initiatives. Because the reason I don't like it is that people will sign anything if you're compelling, and you go out and say, hey, would you sign this? And they'll give you your signature and address, and then you gather these signatures, it ends up on the ballot. It's somewhat of a murky issue at times, many times, and then it gets passed. Then there's nothing that can be done with it. It can't be altered, it can't be changed. And then it locks in finance. And then the more things that get locked in like that without any ability to change it or update it or amend it, the more difficult it makes it for a state legislature and a governor to do the right thing for education, or do the right thing for public safety, or do the right thing for our streets and our highways. So I'm not in favor of voter initiatives. So I'm out there.
Okay, Ms. Travers?
Terry, I love you, and I swear I'm not having a dig at you at all. But on the one hand, we're too stupid enough to know what we're signing, but on the other hand, we're smart enough to be able to make educational choices for our children. We can't have it. We can't have it both ways. And I'd like to very quickly see a row of hands of everybody who's actually applied and had an ESA voucher for their children.
I think that's a fair.
Oh wait, Hank, I've had an ESA voucher for my kid.
Are you the only one?
I think I'm the only one.
All right.
And so, I have a special needs child. She has a developmental disability, and COVID was really hard for her. She's got auditory processing, and after about 3 days on Zoom, she was just lost. So I went ahead and pulled her out, and I got my ESA money. You know how much I got? I got $3,000. Do you know what that covered? That covered her occupational therapy. So I hear what you're saying about, all we need is access to transportation so that we can send our kids to Brophy. If I'm an underserved community with my $7,000 and tuition is $20,000, where am I going to come up with that other $13,000? Anyone? Bueller? No. So, so this panacea of, free market school choice and how it's going to lift up the public school system is just not going to happen. What we need to do, we have innovation. We have innovation here in our districts. You look at Kyrene here in District 12. We've got a school called Kyrene de las Manitas, which is formerly a Spark program that worked in conjunction with the University of Arizona to actually start up a brand new innovative kind of pedagogy that involves student-based, student-led project-based learning. We've got 2 schools that teach you dual language. We've got a STEM school. We've got a leadership academy. That is choice. If you're talking about, parents being able to take this money out, first of all, if it's just a check, and this is part of my experience with an ESA voucher, the people that get all the big money are kids that have severe medical issues. They're either autistic and have physical disabilities that are going to cost that amount of money anyway. And if you think some private school like Brophy is going to take that kid, then you got another, wake up call coming. And so what we need to do is, you talk about administration. That's not just, some superintendent making $100,000. Administration is also the lunch lady and the bus driver. And right now in Kyrene, we got a shortage of both. And so, if we had, Mitzi said it before, and Pat, if we had a fully funded public educational system, there wouldn't be need for any of this other stuff. But the fact is we don't. And so, we have this this rise to action about how we need to free market economy in schools, and they're going to, cause everybody to innovate. Quite frankly, the way that the bill is set up now, to my understanding, if Charlie Kirk wanted to create Turning Point Academy, which he's already said he's going to try to do, that with no accountability in a bill that doesn't have any kind of standardization on what is taught and how it's taught, and, any kind of metrics that gauge, how and what a student is learning, then, we could set up Charlie Kirk Academies everywhere. And then guess what? Nobody's coming to Arizona because we have an incredibly uneducated population. I love my kid. I'm a scientist. And if I would never be so presumptuous as to think that I could teach my kid. I mean, I got 2 girls, they fight all the time. I don't even know how to mitigate, who gets the cake pop from Starbucks. I mean, these people are, the reason that we have standards in place and educational standards for teachers is because they don't know just how to teach a 2 + 2. They know how to create human beings who will be relevant members of society. And we need to fund that education. So the guy that is counting your change at 7-Eleven and the person who's caregiving in your retirement home is just as educated and important as, as your mechanic or your guy who's getting a PhD. Okay, maybe it's different, different levels of education.
Okay.
Sorry, this is my,
I know. It's all right.
Dave, wait till
There's a lot of ground to cover here.
Dave, right now you've got a newborn. You wait till he's 2 and 3 and 4 and 8. You got a roller coaster ride ahead of you, my.
Hank,
All right.
Hank,
Yep.
I will say, I have a 40-year-old son, so I did not apply for an EAS for him. I paid for all of his college, and my daughter's 2 at ASU. And I will say to educators, to administrators, to district leadership, join with others, reduce your costs, take the challenge. If public education is the bomb, then they will prevail. And so EAS is there. NASA didn't like it when Elon Musk came along, and the big 3 didn't like it when he came along with his electric cars. Innovate, and you guys, you get the money, a big pile of money, and you have the best and the brightest. And so I say, innovate and win.
Teachers
It is for the kids. It's for the kids. It's for our kids. That's all I have. Thank you.
With every pay raise, Terry, teachers are still pulling out of pocket to buy school supplies and pay for field trips. I mean, people say, oh, but we're giving pay raises and we're paying our kids. It's not enough. We're still 49th in the country. And you know what? We used to be 16. So how do we get to the point that we're at now?
Well, right now we have incredible inflation right now.
No,
I
no,
can
no,
tell
this
you-
was, Terry, we have been 48th, 49th for years before inflation and before you want to joke, blame Joe Biden for whatever happened. This has been a problem. Mitzi talked about bioscience innovation in 2014. Are we still the central hub of bioscience here? No, because we've been pissing around, trying to take money out of the system and, trying to create excuses for why we're not doing it. If you want, you guys are free market economists.
Look, I've seen pay raises. The governor was instrumental in doing the 20% raise, and then there was a raise in this year's budget. Whether that ever gets to the teachers, I don't know. So raises are happening. Our legislature does care about education. It does care about kids, and we want you to. Let's get to the table. Let's figure it out. Let's work together. That's you and me, and or Patty or whoever it is. Let's work it out and let's look for solutions.
I totally agree with you, but we need to come into this. Hank, I'm going to let us. I've got the secret signal now. That's the pen. He's like, wrap it up.
Real quick there.
Let some other
Senate
people speak.
candidates, and if we want to talk about abortion in the 2020 election, we got.
Oh my goodness! All right, bring it on.
Everyone wants to talk about abortion in the 2020 election. So, Senate candidates, expand ESAs. How do you justify that, Mr. Richardson and Ms. Epstein? Would you kill it off completely if you got the opportunity? Mr. Richardson, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So I will be very brief so we can get on to other questions. But I will say there's actually a really easy explanation, and that is since 2018, the world has changed. COVID changed a lot. I'm coming from a background in personalized medicine. It's been obvious there for a long time that a one-size-fits-all approach does not work for patients. One drug does not do the same thing in every patient. And that is, I think, people and parents have learned the hard way during COVID that as schools had to change the way they taught, and people were online, it became abundantly clear to everyone that everyone learns differently and that this was not good for everyone. So giving people choice, I do believe it is what a vast majority of parents and people in our district want. And then, besides that, I would say one last comment is, as we talk about taxpayer money, parents are taxpayers. It's their money. And when they take out an ESA, not all of it goes to the parent. Half of it stays with the school that their child would have gone to. So I think that's really important that's being left out in this discussion, that it is parents' money.
Okay. Ms. Epstein?
To be clear, an ESA, I got you, Hank. To be clear, an ESA, not half of it stays with the school, 10% does not stay with the school. So 90% goes to the parent and 10% stays in the general fund with a small percentage of that 10% staying with Department of Education to try to manage this incredibly inefficient manual system of empowerment scholarship accounts, which I would not eliminate it. When I was a school board member, I lived through seeing our students with special needs wanted to be able to go to a special school. And at that point, there was the federal law that said, sure, take tax dollars and go to a special school if your local school cannot meet your needs. But it was a very cumbersome situation. So we created ESAs, and it works for that small population who has special needs. But expanding it is wrong, because wherever we put money, the money goes, something grows. What do we want to grow? Well, in the case of this, where there's no regulations, no laws to keep children safe. Think about that for a minute. No laws, even to make sure that the teachers are fingerprinted. And we're going to give a lot of money to this. So somebody down the street can open a school in their garage and get the money, and we don't know if the children are even safe. Now let's think about, what are they teaching? Well, in a public school, we decide by consensus, what will we teach our children? We start at the state level to say this is what we want them to learn in 4th grade, 6th grade, 12th grade. Then we go to the curriculum, where the whole community must decide on the curriculum, and the books are the next level, and the community has input into that too. So what we learn matters so very much. We can get to the truth if we all come together and come to consensus on it, But in a private school, it's the opinion of the owner. The opinion of the owner, as opposed to coming to it by consensus of the community. So expanding vouchers, no. Keeping the system available and strong for our students with special needs, yes.
Okay,
But so clarification, but if you'll agree to expand it for special needs kids, you're basically saying you don't care about the safety of special needs kids?
We need to also expand the accountability of it to make sure that their safety is protected. But with a smaller population, we can keep much better eye on being partners with those parents to help them through the process. The Department of Education can help them in being partners through the process with a small program. With a large program, we just lose sight of it. So it's a great question. I appreciate it, Mr. Richardson.
So I would just disagree that the parents are capable and that we can make a system that works. In my experience, innovation never happens when people say it's not possible. My job for years has been to actually say this phrase, it's possible. Because people come to me with ideas and they'll say, can we build this? And I say, yeah, it's a matter of time and money. And it's always possible. And that's the mindset we have to bring into water discussion, into all aspects of it. And so I just have expected more in terms of your support for education and funding for schools throughout the tenure of your time in the House.
I couldn't have been more supportive for education funding. I am there on the floor speaking up for our children nearly every day of the legislative session. And can I just push back on one point that you've made? Government does innovate. For instance, maybe you've heard of a little company called Rosetta Stone. They've been wonderful innovators in language training and what's the best way to help the human brain learn different languages. And they have monetized the research that was done by the government's research. Time after time, many different processes have been done and innovated by the government.
vote
for
To
them.
say that the government can't
We've got to
innovate
move
is
on,
being
please.
blind
You don't
to
vote for
all
them.
the innovations government has
Representative?
made.
Please, we've got to move on. All right, we'll get to these last two questions, one way or another. As I'm sure you all know, the United States Supreme Court has struck down the Roe versus Wade precedents and essentially left the question of abortion up to state legislatures. I want you to very quickly and very clearly explain to the voters where you draw the line on what should be legal abortion. Now, I think this works both ways, but I want the Democrats to explain what kind of restrictions they would be okay with, and the Republicans, what kind of allowances would you be okay with when it comes to abortion in Arizona? This is an important question for a lot of people, and we need clarity. Mr. Rowe, why don't we start off with you today, this round?
Okay, I'm sorry. Give me the question again, please.
Where do you draw the line on abortions? What kind of abortions, if any, would you allow to be legal in Arizona?
This is a discussion that's been going on for long before the 1960s, and we still are literally fighting over this today. And I know that sometime, I think it's maybe late in September, there's going to be possibly potentially a restriction. And for me, first of all, I want the best planning for women, and I want to hold them up and celebrate women and the fact that they can have children. And when you,
I'm sorry, sir, we're short on time.
all right, all I can say
Be okay with.
is,
if any.
look, if I had to hold my nose and vote for 12 weeks, then I could support that. If that's what it took to pass something to save children's lives and give them a chance at life, like I was when I was adopted and out of foster care. That's my
Okay.
answer.
Thank you. Appreciate the clarity. Ms. Travers, sorry, I'm out of order here. Ms. Travers,
Travers,
what kind of restrictions?
but that's okay.
Sorry, long night. What kind of restrictions would you support, if any?
So, and I say this with all the love in the world, but that is a question that will definitely come from a man, because quite honestly, abortion is healthcare, and you cannot, you don't know. First of all, government shouldn't be, it's not up to the government. It shouldn't be up to a government, you know, when we decide to exercise our healthcare options. And you don't know. I have had 4 pregnancies, and something has gone wrong at different gestational age limits of every pregnancy. So how do we say, and how do we criminalize, you know, this is it 1894 or 1901 law criminalizes it all. And you don't know what the situation's going to be. I had a child at 32 weeks. I had one at 35. I delivered stillbirth at 24. And so, you know, the bottom line is abortion is healthcare. I support a woman's right to choose and have an abortion if she needs it. You know, this decision to overturn Roe versus Wade has been incredibly unpopular. This has been settled law for over 50 years. I do not want my girls to go back in time with this, you know, with these restrictions. Right now, we have a woman in Louisiana who is being forced to carry to term or till whatever happens, a baby with no skull. I want everybody who's listening to think about this. There is a baby whose skull is not growing, and she is being forced to carry this fetus inside of her. We have women who have had, pregnancies where the fetus is not viable, it's an ectopic pregnancy, and she is bleeding out because she is not allowed to get the health care that she needs because of these draconian laws that have been put into place. So I'm going to keep it short this time. This should not even, quite honestly, be a question. It is, but that's where I stand on it. Abortion is healthcare, and anybody should have their own ability to self-determine what their healthcare needs are. It should be between her and her doctor, and we shouldn't put any kind of restrictions or regulations through the government to determine what is or isn't appropriate for that individual.
Okay. Ms. Contreras?
Well, I can ditto what Stacy said. Definitely, you know, I'm pro-choice, and I believe medical decisions should be made by the person involved, not the government. Government needs to stay out of it. This was settled law for 50 years. People have had legal abortions, safe and legal abortions for 50 years. Now we're going backwards. That doesn't make any sense. And like Stacy mentioned, you know, there's different things that happened during the 9-month cycle of pregnancy. I had a friend who I just found out about that she had an ectopic pregnancy when she was much younger. She said she almost bled out. You know, those are very dangerous situations. I don't know how far along she was, but regardless of that, had she bled out, had she died, had she been here today, she wouldn't be here tomorrow. You know, and she wouldn't have these 2 beautiful kids that she has right now, young men that are going to be graduating from high school. So, you know, we can't be putting these restrictions on people. Like I said, Roe v. Wade was established law for 50 years. We need to go and help women, and it is abortion is healthcare, like Stacy said, and we just need to make sure that we can keep abortion safe for everyone, for safe and legal for everyone.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chaston?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I am pro-life with exceptions: rape, incest, life with mother or child. And that's the quick answer explanation. I've been surrounded by women my entire life. I have 4 sisters. I know a brother that was born at 23.5 weeks, viable, had a birth defect, lived 15 days. Had he not had that birth defect, he would have lived as a viable person. I have 2 daughters. My wife has 2 sisters. All my life, until I had my son, I've been surrounded by women, and many of issues related to women. As a man, I find it difficult to weigh in because I'm not a woman. I can't carry that baby. In many ways, I agree with Stacy Travers. And I don't really want the government involved in a decision between a woman and her doctor. However, there's another life involved. And I want to stand up and represent, and the government should represent that other life. And that is why I'm pro-life. Life is valuable, and we need to value life. And so what I support is the law that the Arizona legislature passed this year that bans abortion after 15 weeks. Thank you.
Okay.
But that's
15
not, but
weeks.
that's not what the Attorney General right now wants to regulate. And at what point is the fetus and the baby's life more important than the mother's? So you're pro-life, but clearly, you know, I'm not having a personal dig at you, Jim, but you know, it's like people say they're pro-life, but what about the life of the mother?
That's massively important. Absolutely.
Clearly not. If it's only rape and incest that allows you to have an abortion, then, you know, well, you know.
Well,
if mom
Stacy,
goes
you didn't
and-
hear me. I also said the life of the mother and child.
Okay, Mr. Richardson, or should the state be drawing the line?
Yeah, thank you. So I think this is actually an incredibly simple issue if you only believe there's one life involved, in which case it's really cut and dry. If you acknowledge that there is a second life involved, it's more complex. And I think that we can do better at supporting women. That said, if you asked me to choose between, you know, late term and all the way up until partial birth abortion, like my opponent supports, I would choose the 15-week law, the 15-week abortion ban. And I do think it's very important to note that just in the media and online, there's been a lot of false information spread. And I was door knocking and met someone who went to California because they wanted to get a DNC because they miscarried. And I had shared with her that we have also been through that process, and that miscarriage management is not legally considered abortion, and it is not outlawed even under the territorial ban. Ectopic pregnancies, the procedure is not a DNC. It is not an abortion procedure. It is different. And so while making an exception for the life of the mother is absolutely important, it's even probably legally irrelevant in that case, because that's also not considered abortion. My last comment would be that I know someone who has been in all of these situations. I know someone conceived from rape. My wife was an unplanned pregnancy while her parents were low income. And I know someone who has been in the case of having to choose the life of the mother over the life of the baby. And in that case, that was a late term baby. The procedure was not to abort it, it was to deliver it. And so in many of these cases, the outcome or action is not an abortion in order to save the life of the mom. And I'm simply sharing that, provide some ease for listeners. But that said, again, I forced to choose between late term and partial birth abortions and the 15-week ban, I choose the 15-week ban. And
Nobody does that though, Dave. People aren't
rule
40
on that as they approach the issue of the territorial ban.
I respectfully, people
Representative
aren't 30.
Epstein? I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
we've got to keep
No,
moving.
it's okay.
I want everyone to get a chance to
But I
explain.
know Mitzi's going to say people aren't 38 weeks pregnant and then decide to just have an abortion just cause.
And let her
Aren't
say.
you, Mitzi?
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to just first say that my opponent, Mr. Richardson, you implied my position on this issue. I will ask you to take on one of the main rules of the House right now, and that is do not speak for somebody else. You do not get to state my position on issues. I'm about to state my position.
I'm just going off of
And the
your record.
terms you've just used, something about full-term abortion or something like that.
Late
These are
term and
political
partial birth
terms.
abortion.
Yeah, these are political terms. These are not medical terms. So my first point is I will ask all of my colleagues to start talk to a lot more OBGYNs and learn a lot more about ectopic pregnancies, when a DNC is needed, and talk to more women who presented for a miscarriage in the emergency department and were told, oh, you're not near enough to death. You have to go back and bleed some more before we can help you, even with the abortion laws Arizona has now, because we have that one 24-hour delay. So let's make sure that when we have this debate, and we're going to keep having it, I value that, and I appreciate the courtesy all of you are extending in having this very passionate debate. But we need to start with what little human anatomy and talking about what is really happening in these situations And my bottom line is I trust the women. I support a pregnant person's right to choose when and with whom to have a family. With whom to have a family, you know, I'm talking about rape and assault and all of these tragic situations. And these tragic situations are why government doesn't belong in there. But I know that we as a state have a place where we can all agree, and we have to come to that place. So what we need to do is consider the fact that Roe v. Wade was established law for decades. It worked. It was working for all of us. And we need to think about codifying that at the very least, but more than anything else, we need to have the discussions very soon, possibly first thing when the legislative session starts, because people are losing their lives with this. Nobody knows what law to apply. My opponent has said, oh, DNCs, no problem. Well, that's not what I'm hearing from people who have presented in emergency departments. So let's get together on what the law is and is not. We've got to fix that, and we've got to roll up our sleeves and do the work and listen to each other, because I am listening to the full extremes and also, and those who, my heart breaks for everybody in this story. And we've got to listen to each other with our hearts and our minds. And we have to start from the actual basic anatomy of what's going on and the medical science that is needed for these things, because abortion is healthcare. And we need to make sure that we respect pregnant people enough to make good decisions.
Hank, Hank,
Yeah.
I got it. But there's 50 million lost babies. That is not healthcare. That might be casual health care or something like that. But look, I support moms. The Republican Party supports moms, and having a child is an absolute miracle. And I support women who want to exercise a right to protect themselves in advance, first of all, getting pregnant, and then soon after that, and then that's it. So anyway. That's my point.
I'm glad that you support Terry, because the Republican Party has voted no on kids' care, expanding health care for children, and no on temporary assistance to needy families time after time. So I'm glad that you are the Republican who does care about moms and children. I'm really glad to hear that.
Good.
And just as a response to saying I don't care about women, yeah, I mean, that's like saying I don't care about my wife, I don't care about my daughters, I don't care about my sisters. Healthcare for women is the bigger issue than abortion. Women need to get the healthcare that they need, especially single mothers, and they need the resources to be able to do what they need, and they need that healthcare. When they go into an emergency room and they can't get the healthcare that they need, that's a travesty. Women need the healthcare that they need, but there is another life involved, and that's the point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think anybody said that we didn't think that you care, Jim. It's just that
You did.
no, I didn't. What I said is that this isn't really a space that you all understand. So I respectfully say to you, I love men. I couldn't have had my children without men, but until you get a uterus and some ovaries, I really don't think that it's a place for men or for government to decide. And to your point, Terry, you were adopted and you're really proud of that, right? And so there are over 100,000 children in the system in the United States right now who need adopting. So, if we can take care of all of them first, then maybe we can think about bringing more into the world that are potentially unwanted and are going to live maybe not such a great life like the one that you had, because not everybody gets lucky enough to have the opportunities and the family that you did. And I'm very glad that you did, but to presume that that's going to happen to every unaborted child that is born against a mother's desire is going to have that same fate. So that's something
well,
for you to think about.
Hey, your point is well taken. I appreciate that. And it's look, I'm here for moms. And again, 50 million children lost, while our population in this country is very likely to collapse because we aren't having enough children to continue to run this country.
So we should just have unwanted pregnancies so that we can populate the United States?
Stacy,
A stronger workforce?
this is a big discussion, and it's obvious that it's going to go on long past tonight.
Or
Those are
just
my
sitting down
comments.
and having a cup of coffee with you, Terry.
We'll do it.
All right. I'm glad we let that run out. Everyone feels better? We've said our pieces? Okay. Last question. Let's just do this as a show of hands. Do you agree with the statement Joe Biden won the 2020 election in Arizona fair and square? I'm sorry, Terry, you're muted. I saw your mouth moving.
Well, you did ask for a show of hands, so I said he did win. He's our president.
Okay.
I see
Fair
him
and
on
square.
CNN all the time.
Was it a fair and free election? And did he win it honestly? Anyone? Bueller?
Yeah, I mean,
I
there's
think it
no
depends what you mean by
documented
completely
to the-
fair.
To the alternative.
Dave, did you really just say that, dude? Oh, come on, man.
Okay, I think we got what we needed out of that question. On to closing statements. It's been a heck of a night, guys. We're 2 hours deep. What do you got to tell the voters that they haven't heard so far? Let's start with the Senate candidates. Representative Epstein.
Thank you, everybody. I have appreciated this debate. I am so glad to have such caring people who all want to be part of the Arizona State Legislature. I'm very proud to run on my record of standing up for consumers, standing up for making sure we have a balance between the owners, the workers, and the consumers in our economy, and making sure that we are looking out for small businesses, as well as making sure that our large businesses have room to innovate. I've talked about the innovation economy for decades. I am a computer systems analyst. Technology is my passion, amusement, entertainment. I think innovation is fantastic, and I want to make sure our businesses can innovate, but I want to make sure that our small businesses have a fair playing field. And so I stand up for things like when a bill comes across that says we're going to give a $20,000 tax credit to small businesses, but huge corporations get a $30,000 tax credit for doing the same thing. Why? I'm here for the small businesses. I'm here for the parents and the children. I constantly look at things from a lens of parents and children, and how will this affect our future? I work hard to make sure that I'm working for high quality schools where every child can thrive. That is the lens that I look at so many things, and to make sure that we have an environment where we have clean air and water, and make sure that we are planning for a bright future for everybody. If you'd like to learn more, there's lots on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, emails. Go to my website, sign up for emails, and call my office anytime to make an appointment. I'll be doing more open forums in parks and online. I do everything I do because I'm listening to you, my neighbors. My website is mitziepstein.com, and I look forward to talking with you soon.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richardson, your closing
Yeah,
thoughts.
I'll use part of my closing to say that I believe Biden is the president, that he won, and that there were last minute rule changes that were in some states unconstitutional, like Pennsylvania. So
I only asked about Arizona. If you
Yeah.
want to clarify on Arizona, we're listening.
well, that was my clarification for the last question. So again, I am David Richardson. I'm running for state senate. I believe that in the proverb it says a good person leaves an inheritance for his children's children. I inherited a fantastic Arizona, and I want to make sure my son and his children do as well. I will prioritize education, water security, take immediate action on both of those. I commit to listening, especially to those who disagree with me. And I will do everything I can to find win-win solutions because we are neighbors. We might be in different political parties. We may disagree on some things. We agree on more than we don't. And at the end of the day, we are neighbors. So I am David Richardson, running for state senate and endeavoring to represent our district the way it deserves to be represented. With leadership who will take action, who have a track record of accomplishing things, who represent diversity of our district.
Thank you very much, sir. All right. let's go to the House candidates. Mr. Chasten, you want to start us off?
Sure, thank you thank you for the debate, and for everybody, if there's anybody still left, thank you for sticking through all this. Again, my career as a CPA, I focused my career on small businesses that are in our communities because I felt that could make the biggest impact in our communities and in our state, is helping, small mom and pop or even larger community-based businesses, because those are the businesses that they give back, they contribute, they volunteer in our communities. And so that's what I focused my career on, is helping those businesses and the individuals. And in addition to that, it's building coalitions. When I work with my business owners, it's, you don't do everything yourself. Find people around you that can help you build your business. And that's what I have done my entire life. I've worked with people, whether they're liberals, whether they're conservatives, they're my neighbors, they're my clients, and we find good solutions for everybody. It's not, politics is way too polarizing. We need to be treating people like people and respectful. The golden rule, treat someone else like I want them to treat me. That's how I'm going to be a legislator in Arizona, to find good solutions that make people's lives better. I look forward to talking to anyone that would like to talk to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Contreras, your closing thoughts?
Well, thank you, Hank, for hosting us today. And this has been a lively debate. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you to the Clean Elections, too, for providing this forum to speak to the voters. And thank you to the voters who have watched tonight, and to the candidates who participated, all of you. I have a proven track record of public service. I've drafted and implemented policies, collaborated with many different stakeholders, and have experienced drafting and managing multi-million-dollar budgets. These are my priorities when I get to the state legislature. Having worked with seniors for the majority of my career, I will advocate for our elders. Having two sisters and many friends who are public school educators, I will advocate for fully funding our public education system here in Arizona. Having lived in Arizona my entire life, I will advocate for realistic climate change mitigations and propose common sense alternatives to preserve our precious water resources. I will dedicate myself to providing the best service possible to this district as your state representative. Reach out. I'm always just a phone call away, and my door is open to you. My name is Patty Contreras. My website is ContrerasForAZ.net. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I hope to have the honor of your vote on November 8th, and I look forward to serving you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rowe, your final thoughts?
Okay, well, Hank, thank you for a debate. For goodness sakes, we actually got to debate a little bit, and I'm grateful for that, to tell you the truth. And my name's Terry Rowe. I'm running for the State House. I'm the current Chandler Vice Mayor. I'm a retired Mesa Police Sergeant. I've worked in a bipartisan way with a council and a mayor for now almost 8 years. I want to take and defend our public safety in the state of Arizona, fund but not defund our folks. And I think that's one of the most important things. And I feel like I have been blessed. I've had the perfect life. And I just feel like there's an opportunity for me to come back and go through a session or two and work with some of you nice people and be able to sit and have a coffee or whatever it is, a cafe latte, and sort some of this stuff out. So thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Terry Rowe. Thank you.
Mr. Rowe. Ms. Travers, you get the final word tonight.
So I'm not going to read from any prepared remarks. So I'm going rogue here. The bottom line is, I'm Greek, and there's a Greek saying that says, society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they will never sit in. And so we need to look forward to do what's best for future generations. Now, when I knock on the doors, what I tell people is, it's really quite simple. Politics is about communication and relationship building, right? So if I'm in the legislature and I vote in a way that you don't like, then you ask me about it. I explain my decision. I let you talk to the person that's informed me. You might agree, you might not agree, but you will have respect in your representative, and you will have trust in the process. And if I get it wrong, I own it. It's as simple as that. No excuses, no hypocrisy, no back doors. You just got to own it and know that you're going to do better. And that's where we need to be right now. And there's always room for compromise. I have met Jim before. I have met Terry. Dave, I haven't met you before. You're all nice guys. And I've enjoyed, chatting with you and having coffee with you. And I will always talk to every single stakeholder on any side of an issue. But we have to have some red lines in the sand. And if you know your starting point, for me, I guess you've all figured out by this debate that it's education and, my girls being able to make their family planning and healthcare decisions. But is there environment? Is there Second Amendment? Is there somewhere else we didn't even get to that? Is there housing? Can we come together on ideas, as long as both sides are willing to listen and willing to move Arizona forward, even if it's just incrementally, then that's what our job is. And so, hopefully as your next state representative, you will entrust in me, that respect and that understanding that that's what I will do. And thank you, everybody. This has really been great. It's been great talking to everybody and having a heated exchange of ideas, and that's how it needs to be, because then we all know where we stand on separate issues. And then hopefully after we all make ourselves clear, we sort of come together and figure out how to work together and move Arizona forward. We don't have enough time to piss around with our water issues, our climate issues, education. Everybody talks about a strong workforce and, Elon Musk and all this other stuff. But without being an educated population, we are going to go nowhere. You want to talk innovation? Innovation is not going to come out of a tube. It's got to come out of our educational system. And part of that is not trying to decimate our educational system or, restrict women on the decisions that they can make about their own bodies. So anyway, thanks for your time. It was nice meeting you, Hank.
Thank you, candidates, so much. I know this isn't easy to show up to something like this, and I don't believe any of you were actually required to be here, so that's worth noting. To the voters, we thank you for taking the time to watch this debate, to inform yourself ahead of the November 8th general election. As a reminder, voter registration deadline is October 11th, and early voting begins October 12th. All registered voters can participate in the general election. We encourage you to visit azcleanelections.gov for official, accurate voting information. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good night.